One concept in ZBrush, which is a bit confusing to beginners, is what is actually a tool. You keep hearing the name tool, and you keep seeing it in the interface everywhere. In short, a tool simply just means a 3D model. So whenever you hear tool, think 3D model. Why is this important? Well, it's not just that we have a different term, a 3D model. It's also a really important concept, and you will be hindered from working unless you know about what this actually is. So if you were to just click, for instance, here and make a cylinder or a cube, whatever it might be, you see it's cylinder 3D. And by default, you might have standard brush enabled, and now you just want to sculpt on this. This is very, very common. You start off ZBrush the first time and you're just like, oh, cool, I've heard so much about this, let's just start sculpting. And you click and you're like, oh man, what happens now? And it says, to enable sculpting, please convert this 3D primitive to a polymesh 3D by pressing the Make Polymesh button in the tool palette. So what this means is that now we are in an initializations mode, which means that we can't really sculpt on it, because we have to get out of this mode. Now, this is not a bad thing. It means we have a lot of control over our primitives. So if we go all the way to the bottom of tool, if you don't have tool, you can just dock it over, just click here and just drag it over. And then we just scroll all the way to the bottom. So here we have initialize. So here you can see that we have a bunch of different options for it. We can change the size, we can change the height, we can change the inner radius, whatever it might be. So you can do all sorts of these really cool things right away. Most importantly though, I would say that we can change the amount of segments. So if you want to make something really low poly, you can do this right within ZBrush without having to go and take this from something like Blender or Maya. Now, when we want to sculpt on this now we can hit Make Polymesh 3D, and now you can see that it has been cloned and it's over here. It has the prefix PM3D, which just stands for Polymesh 3D. And now if you were to sculpt on it, you can actually do this. Now, obviously, we don't have any resolution, but you can now actually manipulate the object. This is impossible without doing this. So let's check out a few other ones as well, what we can do with them. Like normally, what you would do, you would start with a sphere, and you would just go to the front view and you start sculpting, and you're like, okay, I can't do that yet. So then we hit Make Polymesh 3D, and then we can start to actually manipulate this. This is how a lot of sculpts are made in ZBrush. You start straight up with a sphere. So the initialize menu is not something you'd use a whole lot, to be honest, because you might use a sphere here and you might just manipulate this until you have the shape you desire. But there are some really cool ones here. Like if we were to take a look at the spiral 3D, this is really cool. You can use this to create all sorts of crazy things like horns, for instance. So if we go all the way down to tool, initialize, and here you can see we have coverage. So here we can change the coverage of it. We can also change the thickness of it. We can change the thickness of the end of it. Create some issues, but we can easily just smooth it out. So now you just have this really awesome horn. So if you're making a goat or something, it can actually be really hard to make these kind of horns in ZBrush because it's such a perfect spiral, because this is made using like fancy math. So really useful stuff. So now if you want to convert this to a polymesh, you just go up here and make polymesh, and there you go. So now this is perfectly manipulatable. We also have the terrain, where we can now just change the slope of it. Like if you want to make this a very specific terrain, for instance, instead of going in and sculpting it, you can create really cool things right away from this. So you can just get a starting point for some environmental work. So useful stuff. Let's check out the gear 3D as well. This is one you're never really going to be using, but it does have some really cool features of it. Like if you're doing something, some hard surface stuff, it might be a really interesting starting point for you. So that is essentially what a tool is. Again, to reiterate, a tool, when you hear the word tool, think 3D model. And when you want to actually start working in ZBrush on your model, you're going to have to make a tool or primitive and then hit Make Polymesh 3D under Tools.